You may be noticing that the setup is looking a little bit differently today. Hello there, writerly friend. Welcome back to Max's Writer's Life Vlogs, where I talk about my own process, what I've been up to for the last week, as well as offering writing advice and inspiration along the way. I got my stool back, which allowed me to finally return to the original setup from like 6 months ago. It actually is way more comfortable, and it feels like I'm shooting some sort of like VH1 behind the music, except I don't make music, I make books, so I guess it would be VH1's behind the book, but why would VH1 be doing a series on books? But anyhow, like I feel like this should be black and white, and there should be like another camera that gets like my profile, and it cuts back and forth. That's the sort of like high-level professional camera work that you won't find in these videos because I'm just too lazy. Talking about being lazy, let's not do that and dive right into the subjects for today. What was I up to last week? So, what was I up to last week? If you don't already, please consider following me on Twitter. I talk about stuff there on the fly. If you want the quickest updates, follow me there. But I was talking on Twitter about the not so good writing sessions that I had. I had a 2 days back-to-back of writing sessions, and on the first day, for the continuation of a previous project, if I must be clear, and from the very first day, I wasn't feeling it. And maybe some of you out there understand what I'm talking about, some of you maybe don't, but it's the feeling of like, when you're in the zone, when you're feeling the writing, when you're feeling the project, it just goes. It just goes. It just goes. And I spent those 2 days like dragging my feet. Like the act of writing felt like, in my mind's eye, the only thing I could see myself as is like in a swamp with like knee-high water. Just is literally what it felt for 2 days. And I took a pause because at the end of the first day I was like, I'm this close from just deleting all of this. I stopped because I don't know about you, but I'm the sort of person where like being able to stop, look at your work, and just stop for a moment is really important, because in a moment of passion I could have easily just deleted all of those days worth of work and just move on with my life, which is not exactly wise, because especially because it's, you know, it's work, and when you're this close to the work, it's very easy to just think that it's terrible and awful and garbage and just cut it and burn it and throw it in the trash. But it's better to stop, consider things, and move on. I stopped after those days of writing. I reviewed what I had done. I tried a little bit more of writing, and it just wasn't working out. I realized that I just kind of jumped into the project without preparing properly, without getting into the mood properly. And I should have known, if you follow me on Twitter, I was tweeting about this. The instant I started writing this story, I was like, man, this is depressing. I can't wait to write something happy. I should have known right there. From that point on, I should have known. I know it sucks, and it really does kind of suck, but that's just the way life is. I mean, like, I'm not gonna spend like a week just bashing my head against the wall if it's really not working out. And maybe it's just because I'm really good at just looking at myself and going, okay, what is actually going on? What is actually the problem? And I was not in the frame of mind. So, and again, if I'm not enjoying the story and I'm not in there, then, you know, what am I doing other than wasting my time? I switched gears, I picked up another project, and things are looking a lot better. I'll have a really meaty writing update next week. Remember, be honest with yourself. Stop before making any big, enormous decisions. Remember that. Most often, things are not as bad as you think. Stop, consider, move on. Maybe you will need to stop the story, maybe you won't. The only way that you will know for certain is to give it a little bit of time, okay? Sleep on it. It's the worst time to make choices is right after something happens, okay? And that's it for today's episode of Life Advice. That sounds just like writing advice. But let's dive right in with the main subject of today's video. Reading like a writer. What does this mean? So, let's take it from the top. Where did I first hear this term? Where did it first pop up? And I think that for me, at least, it first came up during one of the creative writing courses that I was taking. I believe that one of my fellow students was mentioning it. And much like Show Not Tell, it was one of those things where I read it, I picked it up, you know, someone told me, and I was like, what does this mean exactly? Because just like with Show Not Tell, it felt a lot like, you gotta feel it, okay? You gotta feel the writing, dude. And that's always a problem, of course. If your term is not clear, then it's probably not very effective. And I struggled a lot understanding this. Like, I would ask people, and they would all have different definitions, because it felt, for a lot of them, that it meant reading other people's work with a really, really critical eye, almost as though you were giving them feedback. Like I tried that, like I tried just, continuing reading whatever book I was reading, whatever I had picked up, and reading it with a really critical eye as though I was giving feedback to somebody, which by the way was what we mostly did in that creative writing course. We would write stuff, share with students, get feedback, and so on. So I would read it with that mindset. And I found that doing that, like actively reading a book as though giving feedback, made reading really, really not fun. Because if you have ever given feedback to somebody, and I hope it was constructive feedback, you're reading the story without really being into the story, because instead of being immersed, you're looking for things that need fixing or things that, immediately take you out of the story, even the slightest thing, and making note of that. And reading a book critically like that made the process of reading a story not very enjoyable. So as you can tell, this particular definition was not really working for me. And a long time passed, just like with Show Not Tell, where I had this like idea on like the back shelf of my mind, and I didn't know what it meant, and I just kind of kept it there, hoping that one day I would find a solution for it. And eventually I did. Because eventually I read a book called On Writing, a memoir of the craft by Stephen King. And in that book, he has a really particular passage that, it's a really famous quote, and I really like it, and I'm gonna paraphrase it really badly, but it goes a little bit like this. If you don't have time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write. Simple as that. And it was then, like, right at this moment that I had this, like, a little bit of a realization, like, that thought, that idea in the back shelf of my mind started, let's say, like, blinking, or just yelling at me, going, hey, listen! And I picked it up and I was like, hey, maybe reading like a writer doesn't mean to look at everything critically, it just means to read a lot. To read a lot so that you are not only picking up the techniques of other writers, but also doing that good act of cross-pollination, learning from them, seeing how they tell a story, and not only looking to learn, but also looking to enjoy, to be part of the medium, to not only create for the community, but take from it and enjoy what everyone else is making. And I realized, because this was like years later, that by that point when I was picking up books or just watching TV shows or watching anything, I would immediately be looking for signs of storytelling, looking for moments in which characters would change, or there would be foreshadowing for elements later on, because of course no detail is wasted, right? Any detail that is shown to the reader or the viewer must be meaningful. And whether the story follows up on that or doesn't, that's what makes it effective or not. And all the time I was doing this, I was looking at things like a writer, looking for those elements and those hints. I can't turn that off, it's part of the way that I do things. Why? Because I've been writing a lot and reading a lot. And that's why I think that the idea of reading like a writer is, I don't want to say silly, but like a little bit misunderstood, because if you read a lot and you write a lot and you're creating and working with your craft and your tools and learning from the tools of other writers, you don't have to try. You're going to be reading like a writer at all times because you're going to be looking out for those signs. You're going to be learning from other writers, being immersed in their work, and creating your own in turn. And I don't think that this like solely applies to writing. Like this same principle applies to many other creative crafts, such as music and cinematography. Someone who watches a lot of films and studies the technique behind filmmaking can pick up things just from watching anything. It's not something you turn on, it's more like having a hyper-awareness. You become much more aware of certain elements. And writing can help. You can definitely pick up a lot of that extra awareness just by writing. But I personally feel, and I particularly agree with, Mr. King, that if you want to develop a better vocabulary and learn from the tools of other people and learn from the mistakes of other people, reading books is the most effective way. So to me, what does it mean to read like a writer? Well, to me, it really just means reading lots. Being part of the medium, creating things for it, and taking from everyone else's in turn, picking up anything and reading it. If you follow me, if you know me, if you've seen me doing talks, like I write and I read everything. That's why for me, like this resonated really loudly, because I just read anything. Just because I want to be able to see how someone else wrote that story. And not only the good things, but also the bad things. I don't want to say go pick up a bad book, but if you notice something in a story such as, ooh, this was not executed very well, you also learn from that. There's a really good saying, the idea that life is too short for you to make all of the mistakes. And I know that it sucks to be like, yo, like I'm already busy enough as it is. I can't stuff reading a book in my really, really tight daily schedule. And for that I have a couple of pieces of advice. And first off, have you considered audiobooks? And I know that even that may not seem like a really big thing, but seriously, I can tell you from personal experience, even now, because I'm reading stuff, I'm finishing things, and in between getting up, you know, waking up, putting on makeup, making breakfast, eating breakfast, I can listen to an audiobook and I can slowly but steadily get through an extra book in between everything else that I'm reading and doing. It's just a matter of, you know, maximizing your time. And if you have a long commute, oh, get yourself an audiobook. That's a really good way of sneaking a book in between everything else. And yes, audiobooks do count. Reading is not only a matter of visually, but also auditorially, so there you go. So there you have it. I hope that today's video was helpful, and I hope that if anything, I gave you a little bit of a push to maybe, you know, pick up books again, and if you're reading right now, read some more. Consider this a great chance to go pick up that classic book that you never got around to finishing, or that one thing that people keep telling you that is good. Pick it up. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Books that I recommend that I've always thought were really good. The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. That's a classic BL story right there. That one is really good. I never thought I would like it, but then I picked it up and I'm like, this is good. I've read that book like 4 times. It's just such a BL story. And other than that, if you would like to pick up a collection of books that everyone talks about being really good, but they're not actually as good, pick up anything by H.P. Lovecraft, because that guy he knew how to do world building and create an interesting world. His writing is very verbose, I think it's the good way to say it. Also, he was incredibly racist. Man! Oh, H.P. Lovecraft! I would have never likened something to the blackest, deepest depths of Africa. Oh, H.P. Lovecraft, you're so set in your time. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and I hope that if anything, I gave you another point of view. For the time being, I would like to know how your week has been going. Have you been writing? How has Camp NaNoWriMo been treating you? Are you reading anything cool? I have a challenge where I'm finishing things, so if you have any book recommendations, send them my way. But for the time being, as always, thank you for watching, thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, H.P. Lovecraft, you're so racist.